Well, earlier today, a federal judge sentenced former Trump advisor Steve Bannon to 4 months in federal prison for ignoring a subpoena from the House committee investigating January 6th. Federal prosecutors accused Bannon of pursuing what they call a bad faith strategy of defiance and contempt from the very moment he received the subpoena. Of course, this begs the question, why was Steve Bannon sentenced to 4 months in jail when Democrats with the same charge of contempt of Congress have gotten off scot-free? Here to break down this dual system of justice is former U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., and former law clerk for former Neil Gorsuch and founder of the Article 3 Project, Mike Davis, and Joe DiGenova. Joe, I want to start with you. You were the U.S. Attorney. Bannon defied this subpoena, but people defy subpoenas all the time. I'm not suggesting they do that. I'm just saying, in a normal course of action, one, would they be prosecuted for it? And two, would a sentence that was issued today, like the one that Bannon got 4 months in prison, be appropriate for this?
Well, these types of contempts of Congress are very rare. I only had one while I was U.S. Attorney. The bottom line is this. I do not know what Steve Bannon's legal strategy was at the time he was subpoenaed. It's very difficult to figure out. What I would have recommended to him is go before the subpoena, before the committee, appear, but refuse to answer any questions by invoking the Fifth Amendment. It was clear to the judge in this case that there were mostly his claims of executive privilege were not sustainable, but the judge did give him a lesser time than what the government asked and a lesser fine. When you do battle with the Democrats and a corrupt Justice Department, which is what we have right now, this is going to happen. There was nothing fair about this, nothing just. But it is the reality when you have a corrupt House full of Democrats and a corrupt Justice Department and basically a very pathetic U.S. attorney in D.C., this is what you get.
Yeah. Mike, I mentioned it at the top. It's interesting. I remember back in 2012 when the House voted to hold then Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt for Congress for failing to turn documents relating to the Fast and Furious scandal. Nothing happened to him. He didn't serve a day in prison. The same goes for Lois Lerner, the director of the IRS, who she held this division there. She was held in contempt for targeting conservative organizations leading up to the 2012 midterm elections. Nothing came of that. Why is it that Republicans always get the short end of the stick? Because, that's just contempt of Congress. Then you get Jim Comey lied to Congress. John Brennan lied to Congress. Jim Clapper lied to Congress. Andrew McCabe lied. They were both referred to for prosecution, and nothing happened. I just don't understand why some people get nothing and Bannon gets 4 months.
Yeah, President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland have politicized and weaponized the Justice Department against their political enemies. They know that President Trump is going to beat President Biden in the presidential election, and they don't want to fight this through the democratic process. They want to try to eliminate President Trump and his supporters. They started off by going after every grandma and goofball who trespassed and took selfies on January 6th. Then they waived executive privilege, constitutional executive privilege, going back to George Washington, for President Trump's White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, his trade director, Peter Navarro, his outside senior advisor, Steve Bannon, even his White House counsel to the president, Pat Cipollone. Now, just today, the January 6th Commission has issued a subpoena for President Trump himself. This is lawfare by Biden, Merrick Garland, and the Biden Justice Department, and it is outrageous what they've done to Steve Bannon here. He was following advice of counsel. His counsel told him that President Trump asserted executive privilege. He was put in an impossible place where if he complies with the subpoena, he's violating the separation of powers and Trump's assertion of his executive privilege. If he doesn't comply, he's going to be put in jail. This is outrageous. He was not allowed to put up this defense in court. This should be appealed to the D.C. Circuit, which will probably affirm the district court, and this will need to be resolved by the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Joe, real quick before I go, when Bannon came out of court, he actually spoke to folks and he said either they've already been turfed out, and he's talking about the January 6th committee, like Liz Cheney, right, or have quit, like Kinzinger and other Democrats, or they're about to be beaten, like Luria, which is Elaine Luria down in Virginia's 2nd Congressional District, or they'll lose their power and become a minority. That was Bannon outside the courthouse. He's talking about the members of Congress on the January 6th committee. Why does that matter? It's the Department of Justice that are pursuing these charges.
It doesn't matter in his case because the case is in the judicial process and it's no longer something that the House of Representatives has any control over. So it really doesn't matter. I think Steve was making a political point to show that he still has some, that he's got some gusto left in him after a very difficult day. And I think he wanted to make a statement for political purposes. With regard to this, the Trump subpoena, in all likelihood, the president will be able to litigate that and the committee will go out of existence and they will never get either documents or testimony from former President Trump.
Yeah. Mike, I don't have any time left, but let me just ask you this. Will Steve Bannon serve a day in jail?
I hope not. I hope the Supreme Court resolves this because this is much bigger than President Trump and Steve Bannon. This is about the president being able to get advice, which has happened for 250 years, going back to George Washington.
Okay. Joe, Mike, thank you both very much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
You bet. Coming up, you probably know somebody who uses the popular social media platform TikTok. You may have even seen a video on it. Maybe you've even been in one of those videos, but you could be risking a lot and China could be collecting your data. You are not going to want to miss our next segment on what is at stake for everyone who uses this app. We'll be right back.